My daughter-in-law said the dinner was cancelled. It's postponed, no need to come. I believed her, but passing the restaurant, I saw her toasting with my son, using my credit card. I instantly pulled out my phone, cancelled the card, and watched the smile wipe off her face. The first lie my son ever told me wasn't the worst. It was just the first brick in the wall he built to shut me out. I'm Jack Morrison, 58 years old, and I spent 30 years as a construction safety inspector. That means I know how to spot a weak foundation before the whole building comes down. Wish I'd seen the cracks in my own family before they tried to bury me. It was a Tuesday evening in March when everything started falling apart. My son David called that morning, excited. "Dad, we're taking you to dinner tonight. Rosario's, 7 o'clock. Our treat." Our treat. Those 2 words should have been my first warning. I showed up at 6:45 because I'm never late. Parking was hell, so I circled the block twice before finding a spot 3 streets over. By the time I walked past Rosario's front windows, it was 6:58. That's when I saw them. David and his wife Kelly, sitting in the corner booth I'd reserved last month for my birthday dinner. Champagne bucket on the table. Kelly's hand on David's, both of them laughing like they'd just won the lottery. And between them, the waiter holding a card reader, swiping something. My card. The one I'd given David 3 months ago for emergencies. The one with a $5,000 limit that was supposed to be for car repairs or medical bills. I stood outside that window for maybe 10 seconds, watching my son celebrate something with my money, while his wife texted on her phone. Then my phone buzzed. Kelly. "Hey Dad, so sorry. Dinner's postponed. David's feeling sick. Rain check?" If betrayal came with receipts, my son just signed his with a champagne cork. I pulled up my bank app. Took me 15 seconds to freeze the card. Another 10 to watch the waiter return to their table, confusion on his face. Kelly tried the card again. Declined. She tried hers. Declined. David's face went from confused to pale to red in about 6 seconds flat. That's when Kelly looked up and saw me standing outside the window. Our eyes met through the glass. I didn't smile, didn't wave, just stood there with my phone in my hand, watching her process what I'd just done. Then I turned around and walked back to my truck. That slap was the last time anyone saw me as the harmless dad. Wait, that comes later. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the first crack widening in the foundation. A reminder that damage doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slow, the way water seeps into concrete. Looks solid, until one day it splits right down the middle. I didn't go home after that. I sat in my truck for a good half hour, staring at the dashboard, thinking about all the moments I'd mistaken for love that were really just early warnings. The forgotten Father's Day call. The Christmas gift card with my own credit card statement inside the envelope. The way Kelly always steered conversations back to money. Mortgages, loans, debt, investments that sounded suspiciously like gambling. I told myself I was imagining it. A lonely old man seeing shadows where there were none. But that night, standing outside Rosario's while they toasted with my credit, I realized I'd been inspecting the wrong building. I'd been checking the neighbors' foundations while my own house was sinking. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, David called, voice tense, trying to sound casual. "Dad, hey, the card. Something weird happened. It got declined last night." "Yeah," I said. "I froze it." Silence. Not long. 2 seconds, maybe. But long enough to hear the sound of something breaking on his end. Pride, trust, whatever was left. "You froze it?" "It's my card, David. For emergencies. Champagne is not an emergency." He started explaining, stumbling through excuses about a celebration dinner, and "we were going to pay you back." I'd heard that line before, from subcontractors who swore they'd pour the concrete tomorrow, just as soon as their cousin paid them back for last week's loan. I cut him off. "You lied to me?" "No, Kelly you lied. And worse, you thought I wouldn't find out." more silence. Then a sigh, the kind he used to give me when he was 15 and caught sneaking out. Dad, it was just dinner. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word hit harder than the lie. Overreacting was what people said when they wanted you to shut up without admitting they were wrong. I hung up, not in anger, just done, like setting down a tool you've carried too long. 2 days passed before I heard from Kelly. Not a call, an email. Long, over-apologized, dripping with guilt but somehow still managing to remind me they'd invited me first, and that I'd hurt David's feelings by embarrassing them in public. I didn't reply. They thought that was the end, that the old man would cool off, unfreeze the card, pretend nothing happened. But I'm not built that way. You don't spend 3 decades shutting down unsafe job sites and walk away from structural failure with a smile. I started looking back, not just at the big things, the money, the lies, but the subtle ones too. The way Kelly always positioned herself between us in conversations. The way David started talking like her, finishing my sentences with the opposite meaning. The way family dinners became, if we have time, instead of, we'll be there. I didn't lose a son in one night. I lost him slowly, one compromise at a time. The real shift came a week later, at my house. David showed up unannounced, shoulders tight, smile thinner than drywall. Dad, we need to talk. We sat in the kitchen. He didn't look me in the eye. Kelly thinks you don't like her. Kelly is right. The truth surprised even me with how easily it left my mouth. He blinked. Dad, why? Because she lies, and she's teaching you to do the same. He scoffed, leaned back, crossed his arms. You don't know her. Son, I know people. I've spent my life walking job sites full of men who cut corners and smile while they do it. Kelly has the same grin as a guy who duct tapes a cracked beam and calls it good as new. He stood up. So that's it? You're just done with us? No, but I'm done pretending the foundation isn't rotting. He left angry, slammed the door, didn't call for a month. That was the calm before the real storm. Because while I was busy learning the truth, they were busy building something behind my back. Not a wall this time, a plan. A plan that involved my house, my savings, my will. The dinner, that was nothing. That was a test, to see how easy I'd be to drain. And when I failed their test, when I froze the card and stood there outside that window, they didn't quit. They escalated, and this time they didn't bother to hide it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the slap, before the lawyer letters, before the night someone tried to get into my house while I slept, there was one last family dinner. The dinner where the cracks finally gave way and the whole structure came down. And if I'd known then what I know now, I would have walked away long before the first toast was made. But I stayed, because I still believed my son was in there somewhere, buried under the debris of someone else's influence. I was wrong, and I was about to learn just how far a person will go when they think the old man doesn't have any fight left in him. They forgot one thing. I don't walk away from collapsing buildings. I bring them down on the people who built them. While you're here, hit the hype button, don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, I got the invitation. David and Kelly were renewing their vows. They'd been married 4 years, and apparently this was some kind of milestone worth celebrating with 100 guests and a band. The card was glossy, embossed in gold, the kind of thing people send when they want to look wealthier than they are. Celebrate love, celebrate life, celebrate us, it said. The us was bigger than the rest of the sentence, like the whole world was supposed to rotate around their marriage. I almost didn't go. I stared at that envelope for a whole day before I even opened it. Every instinct I had, every hard-earned lesson from decades of watching structures fail, told me to stay away. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and there was a part of me, buried deep and still stupidly hopeful, that wondered if maybe David wanted to make peace. Maybe the invitation was an olive branch. Maybe he wanted to apologize, explain, start over. Maybe the son I raised was still in there, somewhere under the fresh paint and bad influences. Turns out, hope is just rust with better marketing. The venue was the Riverside Community Hall, the same place they got married the first time. I remembered that day, 4 years earlier, when I walked Kelly down the aisle because she said her own father wasn't reliable enough. I thought it was an honor back then. Later I realized it was a test. She was seeing how much I'd do for her, how easy I was to pull into her world. I've replayed that moment too many times since, wondering if that was when the first crack formed and I just stepped right over it. I wore my good suit, the charcoal one, the one I'd bought for court appearances back when I had to testify about job site injuries. I brought an envelope with $200 cash, because even when you know people don't deserve a gift, you still try to stay on the high ground. I sat in the back row near the door. Old habit, always know the exit routes. David saw me when I walked in. His expression was complicated, part guilt, part anger, part something I couldn't read, like he was trying to figure out what version of me I was going to be today. Kelly didn't look at me at all. She only looked at the guests, the decorations, the phones being held up to record her entrance. Kelly always performs. She's never just in a moment. She's starring in it. The ceremony was fine. Standard vows, crying bridesmaids, bad speeches, people laughing a little too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Kelly cried at her own vows, which always seemed suspicious to me, like she was moved by the sound of her own voice more than the words coming out of it. David looked tired. Not the sleepy kind of tired, the kind of tired you get from trying to balance too many lies at once. I sat through all of it with my hands folded in my lap, watching, observing. That's what safety inspectors do. We watch for problems before they become disasters. We notice the hairline fractures, the doors that don't quite close right, the beams that sound different when you knock on them. People think disasters come from one big moment. They don't. They come from 1,000 small ones nobody bothered to fix. The problem came during the reception. Open bar, overpriced appetizers, a DJ who thought volume was the same thing as energy. I stayed quiet, ate some chicken skewers, nodded at a few people who recognized me from the first wedding. Then Kelly grabbed the microphone during the open mic portion. She was 3 drinks in, pink-faced and giggly, the kind of drunk that makes people think they're being charming when they're actually walking into traffic. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she said, swaying slightly. "And I have a special request." She turned and looked directly at me. "Jack, David's dad, could you come up here for a second?" The room went quiet, the kind of quiet where forks stop in mid-air. 100 pairs of eyes turned to look at me in the back row. I stood up slowly, adjusting my jacket, and walked to the front. David's face had gone white. He knew something was coming. Maybe not what, but something. "Kelly, maybe we should—" he started. She waved him off, drunk queen style. No, it's fine. Jack, you know that apartment you own on Maple Street? The 1-bedroom you've been renting out?" I nodded. I bought that place 12 years ago, paid cash. Taught myself how to lay the floors, replace the windows, redo the wiring. Sweat equity, they call it. It's been rented for the last 5 years to a quiet college professor who always pays on time. $900 a month straight into my retirement account. "Well," Kelly continued, smiling at the crowd like she was announcing a raffle winner, "David and I are starting our new life together, and we really need a bigger place. So we were hoping you could give us the keys, as a wedding gift." The room was silent. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. "You want me to give you a property worth $200,000, I said slowly. "As a wedding gift?" "Well, when you put it like that," Kelly laughed nervously. "I mean, you're not using it, right? And we're family. Family helps family." I looked at David. He wasn't meeting my eyes. He was staring at the table like the pattern on the tablecloth had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the world. No, I said. Kelly's smile cracked. What? No, I'm not giving you my apartment. Her face changed. The sweetness drained out of it like someone pulled a plug. You're seriously going to embarrass us in front of everyone, after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked. My voice was calm, level. The same tone I used when I told contractors their buildings were unsafe and they'd need to shut down operations immediately. We invite you to dinners. We include you in our lives. You invited me to a dinner you cancelled while eating on my credit card, I said. That dinner? The room went very, very quiet. Kelly's face turned red, then purple. She stepped forward, and before I could process what was happening, her hand cracked across my face. The slap echoed in the silent hall. I've heard less noise from a 2x4 falling off scaffolding. I didn't move, didn't touch my face, just looked at her with the same expression I'd give a cracked foundation beam. You shouldn't have done that, I said quietly. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call. Terry, yeah, it's Jack. Remember that favor you owe me? I'm at the Riverside Hall. Need you here in 10 minutes. I hung up and looked at Kelly. You might want to continue the reception. This won't take long. Then I walked back to my seat like nothing had happened. The music started again. Too loud, too forced, like someone was trying to drown out the memory of the crack. People whispered behind raised hands. David and Kelly disappeared toward the bathrooms, arguing in harsh whispers I could see but not hear. Her hands flew everywhere when she talked, like she was swatting away accountability. 10 minutes later, Terry walked in. Terry Kaplan was 6'4", 250 pounds, and had been a union rep when I worked construction. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to own a room. Built like a wall, thought like a chess player. He wore a suit now. He'd moved up to regional safety director, but he still had the kind of presence that made people instinctively check if they had their paperwork in order. He walked straight to me, shook my hand, and we talked for maybe 3 minutes. I showed him some papers I'd brought in my jacket. He nodded, made some notes, shook my hand again. Then he left. The whispers started immediately. Who was that? What was that about? I saw Kelly's mother lean over to ask David something. His face had gone from white to green. He looked like a man who had just realized the floor he was standing on wasn't load-bearing. I stayed for another hour, ate some cake, congratulated a few people I knew. The cake was dry, for the record. No flavor. Pretty on the outside, bland on the inside. Fitting. Then I went home. That slap was the last time anyone saw me as the harmless dad. You don't demolish a building by screaming at it. You remove the supports. And I had just taken away the first one. 2 days after the wedding, I got a call from my bank. Mr. Morrison, this is Sandra from First National. We need to discuss some unusual activity on your accounts. I was in my garage, organizing tools, stopped mid-reach for a wrench. What kind of activity? Well, it appears someone attempted to take out a personal loan using your information as a co-signer. The application was flagged because the signature didn't match our records. My hand tightened on the wrench. How much was the loan for? $30,000. I sat down on my workbench. Who submitted the application? There was a pause. I'm not supposed to say, but the primary applicant was David Morrison, your son. Of course it was. I thanked Sandra, told her I'd be in tomorrow to file a fraud report, and hung up. Then I sat in my garage for maybe 20 minutes, just thinking, a $30,000 loan, in my name, without asking. This wasn't about the apartment. This wasn't about a free dinner. This was systematic. This was planned. I spent the next 3 days digging, called my credit card companies, checked my credit report, went through every bank statement from the past year. What I found made the restaurant incident look like pocket change. David had been using my information for 6 months. Small charges at first, a few hundred here and there, then bigger ones. He'd opened a store credit card in my name at Best Buy, another at Home Depot. He'd even tried to refinance his car using my credit score. Total damage, about $47,000. On the fourth day, I drove to David's apartment. He lived in a newer complex on the east side, the kind with a gym and a pool and rent that's $300 more than it should be. I knocked on the door at 6 p.m., right when I knew they'd be home from work. Kelly answered. Her smile died when she saw me. "Jack, what do you want?" "I want to talk to my son." "He's busy." "Get him." Something in my voice made her step back. David appeared behind her, takeout container in his hand. "Dad, what's going on?" I held up a folder. "This is $47,000 in fraudulent charges and loan applications. All in my name. Want to explain?" David's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive anger. "I was going to pay it back." "When?" "When I got the promotion at work. When we got the apartment from you. When you got something else from me for free," I finished. "That's not paying me back. That's robbing me in installments." Kelly stepped forward. "We needed that money. You don't understand the pressure we're under. So you stole from me." "We borrowed," David snapped. "And honestly, Dad, it's not like you're doing anything useful with your money anyway. You just sit in that house all day since Mom died. You're old and useless and—" He stopped. The words hung in the air like smoke. Old and useless. I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the man I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped through college, the man who just called me useless while standing in an apartment he couldn't afford, eating food bought with stolen money. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay what?" David frowned. "Okay, now I know." I turned and walked back to my truck. Didn't look back, didn't need to. You don't demolish a building by screaming at it. You remove the supports. Time to start removing. I spent the next week at my kitchen table with a legal pad, a calculator, and 30 years of knowing how systems work. Not the kind of systems you see in movies. No hacking, no guns, no dramatic confrontations. Real systems, banks, courts, leases, insurance, credit bureaus, the quiet machinery of everyday life that most people never think about until it crushes them. People think revenge is about anger. It's not. Anger is what gets you arrested, or at the very least makes you sloppy. Anger is a hammer. Revenge is a scalpel. It's about patience, precision, and pressure applied in the exact right place at the exact right time. It's about not throwing punches, but removing the flaw beneath the person who thought you were standing still. I know weak points. I've been finding them my whole life. I used to find them in scaffolding, load-bearing walls, cracked joists, bad welding jobs, cheap rebar, and corners cut by men who thought inspections were a formality. Now I was finding them in people. Turns out the principles are the same. A structure fails when the people building it think nobody's checking. And David and Kelly hadn't just stopped checking. They never thought I was watching at all. First, the apartment. David wanted it. Fine, he could have it. Just not the way he imagined, wrapped in a bow, handed over like a favor from a senile old man grateful for attention. I wasn't about to burn the building down out of spite. That's what amateurs do. Professionals turn assets into leverage. I called my tenant, Professor Williams. Quiet man, early 40s, taught literature at the college. Always paid on the first of the month, never caused trouble. He once shoveled my sidewalk while I was out of town, left no note, just did it. I trusted him more than I trusted my own son. "Hey, Alan," I said when he picked up. "You ever think about buying instead of renting?" He laughed at first, thought I was joking. I wasn't. "I'll give you first right of refusal," I said. $20,000 under market value. And I'll finance the down payment myself if you need it. He called back 2 hours later. "I'll take it. No financing needed." We closed in 3 weeks. The professor got a home. I made $180,000. And David's daydream about inheriting a free property vanished like smoke. Later I heard Kelly called it financial betrayal. Funny word, betrayal. I always thought it meant stealing from someone who trusted you, not refusing to let them steal from you. Second, the credit fraud. I didn't want David in jail. Prison only makes people meaner and dumber, and I didn't need either of those anymore. What I needed was disruption, inconvenience, consequence. So I filed a police report, stated the facts, unauthorized use of a credit card, no permission given, fraudulent charges, didn't press charges, just let the process start. The name Morrison flagged in the system, connected to fraud investigation. That was enough. Every account in David's name got frozen pending review. His credit score, the one I helped him build, co-signing on his first car, his first apartment, tanked like a stone in a well. Every loan application he'd made or would make. Denied. His financial life didn't just slow down, it stopped. Third, insurance. People don't realize how much they depend on the invisible nets holding them up. I'd kept David and Kelly on my supplemental health insurance since he was in college. Family policy, covered emergencies, dental, vision, maternity. It was one of the last things I still paid for without thinking. The last fatherly reflex I hadn't shut off yet. One phone call. Remove David Morrison and Kelly Morrison effective immediately. No replacement beneficiaries. That was it. They could get their own insurance. At market rates. Which, given the state of the world, meant about $600 more per month, with worse coverage and higher deductibles. I imagined Kelly reading the letter from the insurer. The way her face would twist the same way it did when a server brought her the wrong kind of sparkling water. Entitlement makes people fragile. Remove the cushion, and they bruise fast. Fourth, the mortgage on their current apartment. This part was almost elegant. When David had applied for the lease, he listed me as an employment reference, said I could verify his job, income, and stability. He never asked if I was willing to lie. He just assumed I would. So I called the landlord. Hi, this is Jack Morrison. You have me listed as a reference for David Morrison. I just want to clarify. I never confirmed any employment details for him. I wasn't asked, and I didn't verify anything. I don't know what he submitted to you. Just like that, David's lease renewal was flagged for review. Not denied, reviewed. Landlords hate uncertainty. They don't evict immediately, but they do start looking at alternatives. Fifth, and this was the artistic touch, Kelly's family. People underestimate the damage you can do by simply telling the truth to the right audience. Kelly's mother, Barbara, had always been polite to me, but polite in the way someone is polite to the man refilling their iced tea. Never warm, never affectionate, always evaluating. She was the type to talk about real estate investments at funerals and compare incomes over Christmas dinner. Money, to her, was the only language worth speaking. So I invited her to lunch. We met at a quiet place by the river. White tablecloths, soft piano music, the kind of restaurant where waiters glide instead of walk. She arrived in pearls and perfume, looking like she was prepared to be admired. She wasn't prepared for what I laid in front of her. Barbara, I said, unfolding the first stack of papers, I need to tell you something about Kelly and David's finances. Did you know they've been stealing from me? She blinked, slow, the way people do when they're sure they misheard. I showed her the bank statements, the unauthorized charges, the police report number, the credit card screenshots. Her face shifted, not all at once but in steps. Confusion, denial, alarm, calculation. Kelly wouldn't, she started. She would, I said. She did. Then I pulled out the second folder. It was thicker. This one held documents from the Riverside County Adult Protective Services. Applications for involuntary assisted living placement. Signed by Kelly. Filed on my behalf. For me. Your daughter tried to have me declared incompetent, I said. Tried to put me in a nursing home. Take control of my assets, my house, my accounts, everything. Barbara's hand shook as she read. When? 3 months ago, right around the time the credit fraud started. I sat back and let her read every word, watch the protective mother instinct clash with the reality of the daughter she raised. Evidence is a powerful thing. It doesn't argue, it just waits. When she was done, she closed the folder with both hands, slowly, like sealing a coffin. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I'm going to let them fall," I said, "and I wanted you to know why. That's all." I stood up, left enough cash to cover both meals and a tip, and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. People like Barbara don't scream. They don't throw things. They don't beg. They withdraw. Quietly, permanently. By the end of that week, Kelly's parents had cut them off. No more Sunday dinners. No more loan checks disguised as birthday cards. No more co-signing. No more bailing out. No more covering rent or car repairs or surprise spa weekends that were apparently investments in emotional well-being. Another support beam removed. And like any structure losing weight on one side, the whole thing began to lean. Not collapse yet, lean. Enough to feel it. Enough to notice things weren't balanced anymore. I wasn't finished. They still thought I was acting out of bitterness. They still didn't understand. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was letting gravity do the work. 3 weeks into my campaign, David finally confronted me. I was at the grocery store, loading bags into the bed of my truck, milk, bread, a bag of apples, a new box of nails because I still fix what needs fixing, when he appeared beside me like a shadow that hadn't decided whether it wanted to be seen. He looked terrible. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, shirt buttoned wrong, circles under his eyes so dark it looked like someone had drawn them on with charcoal. His hair, usually gelled into that too-perfect shape Kelly liked, was flattened and greasy. He looked like a man who had run out of plans. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay," I said, still loading the groceries. "You're ruining our lives." "No," I said evenly. "I stopped paying for your life. There's a difference." His face flushed instantly, the way it used to when he was a teenager and got caught lying about where he'd been. "You filed a fraud report," he snapped. "You kicked us off your insurance. You turned Kelly's family against us. You sold the apartment." "The apartment that I owned," I said, setting a bag of oranges into the truck bed. "And that you wanted for free. Yes, that one." "You didn't have to do all this." "Didn't I?" I said. "I tolerated the first lie. I forgave the second. I looked the other way on the third. You took that as permission. That's on you." He gaped at me, like he couldn't believe I was speaking to him like that, like it was the first time he'd seen me as someone with edges. "Dad, I'm your son." "And I'm your father," I said, finally facing him fully. "The father you called old and useless. The father you stole $47,000 from." "I said I'd pay it back." "With what?" I asked. "You can't get a loan. Your credit's frozen. You're months behind on bills. You're about to lose your apartment. And the in-laws who used to float you every time you overdrafted won't take your calls. What exactly are you going to pay me back with? Good intentions? IOUs? Wishes?" David's hands curled into fists, not controlled hands, desperate ones. He stepped forward, squaring his shoulders, trying to use his height the way people do when they're out of arguments and running on instinct instead. He was 42, worked out 3 times a week, kept himself in good shape. I was 58 with 2 bad knees, a lower back that sounded like bubble wrap on cold mornings, and a body held together with ibuprofen and stubbornness. "Maybe I don't ask nicely anymore," he said. I didn't flinch. "You going to hit me, David, here in the Safeway parking lot, over groceries and accountability? I'm tired of you acting like you're some kind of victim." He grabbed my shoulder and shoved me back against the truck. Big mistake. People forget I worked construction for 20 years. People forget that before I was a safety inspector, I was the guy pouring concrete, climbing scaffolding, hauling lumber, snapping lines, slinging hammers, and getting into bar fights where nobody ever called the cops because everyone involved had outstanding warrants. You don't survive that long without learning where to plant your feet, how to use momentum, how to end something fast before it gets messy. David pushed me. I pivoted, let his force carry him just off balance, and suddenly he was the one against the truck, my hand flat on his chest, pinning him there. Not hard, not angry, just firm, controlled, calm. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, quiet enough that only he could hear. "You're going to let go of this idea that you can intimidate me. You're going to accept that you screwed up, and you're going to deal with the consequences like an adult, not a child who never learned what no means." I released him and stepped back. He stood there, breathing hard, face twisted into something between rage and panic. Then he lunged. No technique, no stance, no balance, just blind anger. I'd boxed in my 20s, union gym, learned to slip, block, control distance. Muscle memory is funny. It sleeps for decades, then wakes up the moment someone throws a bad punch. He swung. I stepped in, deflected, caught his arm, turned, and put him on the ground. Not violently, just efficiently. His shoulder hit the asphalt, his breath whooshed out, and then he was staring up at the sky like it had betrayed him too. He lay there, trying to process what had just happened. A grown man, a father, a husband, a son who'd believed for 40 years that he was always one step smarter, one step stronger, one step ahead. That was the moment my son realized, I said, looking down at him, that I didn't raise him to win fights. I raised him to avoid picking the wrong opponent. I picked up the last grocery bag, slid it into the truck, and closed the tailgate. He didn't get up. People walked past. A couple glanced his way, then kept moving. Nobody stopped. Nobody helped him. That's how the world treats people it can smell trouble on. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't a threat. He was just a man who had run out of shields. I got into my truck, turned the key, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw him still sitting there on the asphalt, legs sprawled, hands limp, staring at the ground like it might explain something to him if he watched it long enough. The thing about structures is, they don't collapse all at once. They lean, they groan, they shift. A nail pops here, a floorboard warps there, a window frame starts sticking in summer humidity. You don't always notice the moment the failure becomes inevitable. But once a load-bearing wall gives, there's no unbreaking it. Another support beam gone. And he still hadn't figured out that the worst part wasn't the fall. It was realizing he built the whole structure out of borrowed parts. After the parking lot, things got ugly. I wish I could say the confrontation in that dimly lit patch of cracked asphalt had been the climax, the kind of scene where everyone yells, storms off, and then cools down over the following week. But that wasn't how Kelly operated, and by that point, I should have known better than to expect anything resembling proportionality from her. She believed in escalation, the way some people believe in prayer, fervently, instinctively, and with absolute conviction that eventually the universe would bend to her version of the truth. Kelly started a social media campaign, not a single angry post, not a sad paragraph about being misunderstood. No, she went full scorched earth. A Facebook manifesto, 3 Instagram stories, a TikTok video with moody background music, and a thread on Twitter, X, though I doubt even Elon could spin that platform into something as unhinged as what she was trying to make of me. She posted about how I was a cruel, heartless father abandoning my son, about how I had cut them off financially, emotionally, spiritually, all without warning or justification, about how I was abusing the power of the older generation to silence and control younger voices. I didn't respond, didn't need to, because outrage burns fast and truth is a slow, steady flame. I'd already talked to 3 of her closest friends, the ones I knew actually possessed working frontal lobes instead of being powered by hashtags and vibes. I showed them the credit card statements, thousands spent on luxury skincare, concert tickets, subscription boxes, and not a single payment toward the household bills she had agreed to contribute to. The loan applications, where David had forged my signature, sloppily, I might add, because he never learned that forging a signature requires more than squiggling your way through someone's last name. And then the Adult Protective Services paperwork, clear, clinical, detailed documentation of the months of financial exploitation they'd tried to pass off as helping me manage my money. It didn't take a speech, just a manila folder and 15 quiet minutes at a coffee shop. Her friends started unfollowing her. The ones who always flooded her comments with heart emojis and "Yas, Queen" suddenly disappeared. Her posts got no likes. Her comments got no support. She tried provoking me again, tagging me, adding screenshots of messages cropped just enough to look incriminating, only to be met with silence from me and indifference from everyone else. Social warfare is easy when you have documentation. When you don't have to raise your voice, because the papers speak louder. Receipts are the currency of the modern battlefield. Then, David tried to go after my truck. It was a Tuesday night, technically Wednesday morning, when the security alert popped up on my phone. The truck, a beat-up but loyal relic of my contracting days, had more aftermarket protections than a bank vault. People laughed when I installed the GPS tracker and remote lock system years ago after someone tried to steal it from a job site. "What thief is going to want that old thing?" they'd joke. Turns out the thief was technically family. He rolled into the driveway at 2 a.m., hood up on his sweatshirt like he was auditioning for the world's saddest reboot of Fast and Furious. He had no idea that I was sitting in my living room recliner, slippers on, watching the whole thing unfold on the live feed from the cameras I'd upgraded last year. Watched him jimmy the door lock. Watched him climb into the driver's seat. Watched him fumble around trying to hotwire something that couldn't be hotwired without a degree in automotive engineering. I waited. Let him think he'd gotten somewhere. Let him savor the illusion. Then I hit the remote lock. All 4 doors sealed with an audible clunk. He froze, pulled the handle, pulled it again, harder, like the truck might suddenly change its mind out of sympathy. It didn't. He tried the windows, manual crank, which I'm convinced is the real anti-theft feature in the modern era. Nothing budged. And while he panicked inside, trying to figure out how to Houdini his way out of a vehicle built before he was born, I made a phone call. "Yeah," I told the tow company, tone casual. "I've got a vehicle that needs to be towed from my driveway. Registration is under my name, but there's someone inside who's refusing to leave." I walked outside with my phone recording. The night was cold enough to see my breath, and the only sound, beyond the quiet suburban stillness, was David pounding on the windows and screaming at me to let him out. "Why?" I called back, genuinely curious. "You wanted the truck. Now you're in it." The tow truck arrived 15 minutes later. The driver took one look at the situation, grown man trapped in someone else's locked vehicle, yelling like a raccoon in a dumpster, and shook his head. Called his supervisor. His supervisor called the police. 2 cops showed up, one young and buzzed on the idea of being useful, the other older, tired in the way that only someone who has filled out too many incident reports can be. I showed them my registration, my insurance, my security footage of David breaking in. They made him step out once I unlocked the doors. David was arrested for attempted auto theft. Not charged. I didn't press charges. Not out of mercy, but because I knew the arrest alone was enough. It went on his record. And 2 weeks later, when his employer ran a standard background check for his security clearance renewal, it showed up like a rotten tooth on an X-ray. He lost his promotion. Not fired, just stuck at his current level. Frozen in place. Forever passed over. Another beam gone. His life didn't collapse in a dramatic implosion. It just sagged. Quietly. Permanently. Like a house where the rot starts behind the drywall. Slow, subtle, irreversible. I didn't celebrate. Didn't toast to karma. I just went back inside, turned off the porch light, and let the silence settle. Because here's the thing people never tell you about being the villain in someone else's story. It's not loud, it's not fiery, it's not a cackle and a cape. It's paperwork, it's patience, it's proof. It's knowing that when you stop holding up a structure someone else has been leaning on, it doesn't fall because you pushed it. It falls because it was already hollow. And once it starts collapsing, beam by beam, lie by lie, you don't have to lift a finger. Gravity does the rest. 6 weeks after the wedding slap, I got a call from Terry. It was early, too early for anything casual. Terry wasn't the type to call before sunrise, unless the matter was either urgent, dangerous, or somehow both. "Jack," he said, voice flat, no greeting, no build-up. "We need to meet." That was all. No explanation. No hint. Just the kind of tone that made you put on real pants instead of sweatpants. Because whatever this was, it wasn't the kind of conversation you had in comfort. We met at a diner off Highway 9, the kind of old roadside place that smelled like bacon grease, burned coffee, and the lingering ghost of 1,000 cigarettes smoked before the indoor ban. The same chrome napkin holders, the same red vinyl booths that stuck to the back of your legs if you sat down too fast. The kind of place that had been there so long, the coffee tasted like it had absorbed a century of broken secrets. Terry was already in a booth when I walked in, not touching his coffee, just staring at the table. He had a folder with him, thick folder, overstuffed, edges frayed, paper clips hanging on like they were praying for overtime pay. He didn't say hello, didn't shake my hand, just slid it across the table with 2 fingers like it was a live grenade. "Remember what you asked me to check at the wedding?" he said. I nodded. The memory flashed. Me, still stinging from the slap, pulling Terry aside. The band playing something upbeat while my jaw throbbed and my patience finally wore out. The property David and Kelly bought last year. "The house on Riverside Drive?" I asked, though I already knew. "That one." Terry tapped the folder once. I ran a full safety inspection, off the books after hours, just taking a look around. Didn't disturb anything. Didn't leave a trace I was there. I opened the folder. The smell of paper and mildew and bad decisions hit me all at once. I started reading. Foundation cracks, multiple spidering beneath load-bearing points, some wide enough to slide a coin into. Aluminum wiring, outlawed in new construction for decades because it turns houses into tinder boxes. Black mold in the crawl space, blooming like decay turned into sculpture. An illegal addition, built without a permit, meaning no inspections, no structural verification, just walls held together by hope and amateur carpentry. And then the worst part, structural damage from water intrusion, not recent, not temporary, long-term, wood rot in the beams, warping in the floor joists. A house that could, quite literally, fold in on itself if the wrong storm rolled through. I don't know how it passed inspection when they bought it. "It didn't," I said, flipping deeper into the stack. My finger stopped on a photocopy of the inspection documents, the ones filed with the county at the time of sale. "Look at this. The inspection report is faked. The signature isn't even a real inspector." Terry leaned back, eyes hard. "So, what do we do?" I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, staring at the list of violations, the photographs clipped to the pages. I thought about David and Kelly living in that house, sleeping on floors that weren't safe, walking under ceilings that could collapse, breathing in air that was toxic by definition. I thought about whether I cared. I thought about what they had done to me, the lies, the theft, the manipulation, the slap at the wedding, the social media smear campaign, the attempted truck theft, the entitlement so deep it made the ocean look like a puddle. And then I thought about the house again, about the fact that no one forced David to fake an inspection. No one made him forge a signature. No one told him to gamble with safety to save $1. "We report it," I said finally, "to the county, to the bank, to everyone." Terry didn't even flinch. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer and was just waiting for me to catch up to it. Their mortgage will be revoked. Probably. They'll lose the house. Probably. His jaw tightened. Jack, this will destroy them financially. They'll be lucky to get half of what they paid for it, and they'll still owe the bank the difference. They'll be paying for a house they can't live in. I closed the folder and looked him in the eyes. Good. The county came out 3 days later. They didn't even knock politely. They showed up in county trucks, hard hats, clipboards, and expressions that said they'd seen hundreds of disasters. But this one still made the list. They toured the house. They took pictures. They tested the mold. One of them nearly fell through a section of soft flooring. The next morning, the big red tag went up on the front door. Uninhabitable in block letters. Immediate evacuation required. Entry prohibited without authorization. Violators subject to fines and arrest. The bank was next. And the thing about banks is, they don't panic, they don't cry, they don't get emotional, they just do math. And when the math says asset now worthless, risk unacceptable, they act. Mortgage companies started foreclosure proceedings within a week. David and Kelly had 30 days to vacate. No appeal, no discussion, no bargaining. When you commit fraud in a mortgage process, the bank doesn't hold hands and talk about feelings. They just take the land back. The twist, the part no one saw coming, not even me, was that I hadn't engineered this. I hadn't set the trap. I hadn't forged anything, planted anything, staged anything. I had simply asked the question and waited for the truth to walk in wearing steel-toed boots. The unexpected twist wasn't that I planned this. It's that David bought the house with a fake inspection to save money. And that decision was about to cost him everything. No insurance payout, no legal recourse, no blaming me, no matter how hard he tried. The ruin was self-inflicted, the hammer in his own hand, the fuse lit by his own cheapness. You don't demolish a building by screaming at it, you remove the supports, and sometimes the supports remove themselves. And when that happens, all you have to do is stand back, watch the dust rise, and remember the one rule nobody likes to hear. Gravity is patient, but it never loses. Kelly called me on a Thursday night, crying. Not just sniffling, not just upset, the kind of crying where every third word dissolves into static. The kind of crying meant to disarm, to rewind time, to make the past few months disappear as if all of it had just been a misunderstanding. "We're losing the house," she sobbed. "We have nowhere to go. Please, please help us." Her voice was wet, frantic, and I could almost picture her pacing back and forth, mascara already dripping, clutching her phone like it was a life raft. "Why would I help you?" I asked, not unkindly, just honestly. "Because we're family. You tried to put me in a nursing home." Silence, not even a breath on the other end. For once, she had no script prepared. "I know about the Adult Protective Services application, Kelly," I continued, voice level, steady. "I know you tried to have me declared incompetent, tried to take legal control of my assets. Was that before or after you started stealing from me? I was just trying to secure our future. By destroying mine." More silence. Then, abruptly, the desperation surged back into her words, like someone hit an emotional reset button. "Please," she begged, "we'll pay you back. Everything. We'll get jobs, we'll—" "You have jobs," I cut in. "You just spent yourselves into a hole you can't climb out of. We'll do anything. Should have thought about that before you slapped me at your wedding." Her breath hitched, as if she'd forgotten that moment until I reminded her. But I would never forget the sound of her hand connecting with my face, not because it hurt physically, but because of the message behind it. You are no longer useful, and therefore you are disposable. I hung up. David texted me an hour later, a long paragraph, carefully typed, no emojis, no abbreviations, his version of sincerity, all apologies, all explanations, all promises, all too late. I didn't even scroll to the end, deleted it without responding. 3 days later, they showed up at my house. Both of them. Kelly's mascara had drawn map lines down her face. David looked like he hadn't slept in days. Maybe he hadn't. His pride and his posture were both gone, replaced by that look of someone who still believes they're owed something, but is, for the moment, too desperate to say it out loud. "Dad, please," David started, voice raw. "We're begging you. We'll lose everything." "You already lost everything," I said from the doorway. "You lost it when you decided I was worth more to you as a resource than as a father." "We were wrong," he said quickly. "We know we were wrong. We'll make it right." "How?" I asked. "By paying me back money you don't have. By apologizing for trying to steal my identity. By saying sorry for calling me old and useless to people who barely know me." Kelly reached out suddenly, grabbing my arm, lowering her voice into that soft, pleading tone she used to reserve for bad report cards and expensive mistakes. "Please," she whispered, "we have nowhere else to go." I looked down at her hand, didn't say a word. She let go like it burned her. "You're young," I said calmly. "You're healthy. You have degrees, work history, and your entire lives ahead of you. You'll figure it out. You'll get an apartment you can actually afford. You'll rebuild your credit. You'll learn to live within your means." "We can't," Kelly said, voice cracking. "You can," I replied. "You just don't want to, because you've spent 4 years thinking the world owes you something. That I owe you something. That you deserve a nice house and expensive dinners and vacations and a lifestyle you didn't earn." They didn't argue because they knew it was true. They just looked at me the way children look at locked doors, confused, betrayed, convinced that knocking harder will change the answer. "I don't owe you anything anymore," I said. "I paid my dues raising you. I paid for your college. I gave you every advantage I could. And you thanked me by stealing from me and trying to legally erase me." David swallowed hard. "Dad." "Go away," I said quietly. "Go figure out your lives, without me." Then I closed the door. They stood on my porch for 10 minutes, knocking, calling my name, inventing new versions of apology with decreasing dignity each time. I turned on the TV and let the noise drown them out. At one point, Kelly tried the door handle, as if maybe I had locked it by mistake and this was all some giant misunderstanding. Eventually, the knocking stopped. Eventually, the voices faded. Eventually, the car engine started and the driveway went quiet again. People talk about closure like it's something dramatic, something cinematic, something that comes with violins and tears and a final sweeping monologue. But most of the time, closure is just a door clicking shut and the realization that you don't feel guilty anymore. They chose the path. They walked it with confidence. And when the ground fell away beneath them, they finally looked back, only to find that I was no longer there holding the safety net. I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to their downfall. I didn't dance around the living room. I just turned up the volume a little and let the world return to normal. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go isn't the goodbye. It's realizing how peaceful it feels once the door stays closed. Kelly's designer purse was a knockoff. Everyone knew it, but nobody said anything, until someone posted about it on their neighborhood Facebook group. LOL, Kelly Morrison has been flexing that fake Gucci at every event this year. Girl, we can tell. The comments piled up. Screenshots, comparisons, links to the real bags versus the fakes. Kelly deleted her social media accounts the next day. Their wedding photo shoot, the fancy one they'd booked for the vow renewal, got cancelled. They'd paid the deposit but never paid the balance. The photographer posted the email exchange online, warning other vendors. Beware Kelly and David Morrison. They book services, get the work done, then refuse to pay. David's company HR got an anonymous tip that he'd used a fake reference on his job application. They investigated. Found out I'd never verified his employment for his apartment application. Found out he'd inflated his credentials. He wasn't fired, but his security clearance was revoked. He got moved to a different department, Lower pay, no advancement potential. Kelly's family stopped inviting them to holidays. When Kelly's sister got married, they weren't invited to the wedding. Kelly found out through Instagram. Their friend group evaporated. Nobody wanted to be associated with the couple who stole from family. Nobody wanted to risk being the next target. They moved into a studio apartment in the warehouse district. 700 square feet, no dishwasher, street parking, the kind of place they would have mocked 3 months ago. I drove past it once, saw Kelly taking laundry to the coin machines, saw David carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. They built their future on me. I just repossessed it. I ran into Kelly at the grocery store, same Safeway where I'd dropped David on the pavement. She was in the checkout line with a cart half full, store brand everything, budget cuts. She saw me. Her face went white, then red. "You," she hissed. I nodded politely and got in the other line. She abandoned her cart, marched over to me. "You're happy now, aren't you, seeing us suffer?" "I'm shopping for groceries, Kelly, same as you. We lost our house. David lost his promotion. My family won't talk to me, and it's all because of you." "No, it's because you stole from me, because you tried to have me declared incompetent, because you slapped me in front of 100 people and demanded I give you property I worked 30 years to afford. People were watching now. Phones coming out." "You're supposed to help family," Kelly said, voice rising. "You're supposed to support us. I did support you. For 4 years, paid for dinners, covered emergencies, co-signed loans, and you repaid me by stealing $47,000. We were going to pay you back. When? After you put me in a nursing home and sold my house." Kelly lunged at me, hands out, going for my face. I stepped back. She stumbled. Someone caught her. The whole thing was on video. 6 different phones recording. "Ma'am," the store manager said, appearing from somewhere, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Kelly jerked away. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "It's been over since the moment you thought you could slap me and get away with it." She left, screaming, crying. Security had to escort her out. I finished buying my groceries, paid cash, drove home. The video went viral in their social circle by that night. Crazy woman attacks elderly man in grocery store. I filed a restraining order the next morning. It was approved by the afternoon. Kelly couldn't come within 500 feet of me. Couldn't call, couldn't text, couldn't contact me in any way. Another support beam gone. They lasted 3 months in the studio apartment, couldn't make rent. David's reduced salary and their destroyed credit meant no loans, no help, no way out. The eviction notice was posted on their door on a Tuesday. They had 15 days. I didn't know about it until day 14. Found out through Terry, who heard through the union gossip network. Apparently, Kelly had tried to get emergency assistance from 5 different charities. All denied. "They're moving out tomorrow," Terry told me. "Thought you'd want to know." "Why would I want to know?" "Jack, you're a lot of things, but you're not cruel." "No? No, you're just finished. There's a difference." Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. I drove to their apartment complex the next day, Saturday, noon, moving day. There was a U-Haul in the parking lot, a small one, the kind you rent when you don't have much to move. David and Kelly were loading boxes, no friends helping, no family, just the 2 of them. I parked across the street and watched. They moved like people in a nightmare. Slow, defeated, every box heavier than the last. Kelly sat down on the tailgate at one point, crying. David sat next to her, arm around her shoulders. They looked like kids, lost kids. I sat in my truck and thought about the man I used to be, the father who taught his son to ride a bike, who paid for college, who showed up to every birthday and holiday. Then I thought about the man I'd become, the one who'd systematically destroyed his son's life, who'd taken revenge with the precision of a demolition expert. The rain started. Just a drizzle at first, then heavier. David and Kelly scrambled to cover the boxes, The U-Haul door was jammed. Kelly tried to force it. It wouldn't budge. Rain soaking through cardboard. Their possessions getting ruined. I could help. I had tools in my truck. I could fix that door in 30 seconds. I sat there and watched the rain destroy what was left of their belongings. Then I started my truck and drove away. They found me 3 days later. I was at the cemetery, visiting my wife's grave. David appeared from behind the oak tree. Kelly behind him. Both soaked. It was raining again. "Dad," David said. I didn't turn around. Kept looking at Margaret's headstone. "You're violating the restraining order, Kelly." "I don't care," she said. "We need to talk." "No, you need to leave." "We lost everything," David said. His voice cracked. "Everything. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted?" I turned to face them. What I wanted was a family that didn't steal from me. We made mistakes. You made choices. Every single one. You chose to steal my credit cards. You chose to take out loans in my name. You chose to try to put me in a nursing home. You chose to slap me. You chose to mock me. Those weren't mistakes. Those were decisions. We were desperate. You were greedy. There's a difference. The rain was coming down harder now. We were all soaked. Margaret's flowers were drowning in their vase. "What do you want from us?" Kelly screamed. "What more can you possibly take?" "Nothing. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just wanted you to leave me alone." "We're your family." "No, you were my family. Past tense. Now you're just people I used to know." David stepped forward, fists clenched. "You ruined us." "No, I stopped paying the bill for the life you couldn't afford." He swung. Wild punch, fueled by rage and desperation. I was ready. Caught his arm, twisted, put him on the ground. Clean. Professional. The way I'd been taught in union self-defense classes 30 years ago. Kelly tried to jump on my back. I shrugged her off. She fell in the mud next to David. "You want to know what the worst part is?" I said, standing over them. "It's not that you stole from me. It's that you never even said you were sorry." "Not really. Every apology was just another negotiation. Every plea for help was just another angle. You didn't regret what you did. You just regretted getting caught." David pushed himself up. Mud on his face, in his hair. "We said we were sorry. You said words, but you never meant them. Because if you'd meant them, you wouldn't have kept trying to manipulate me. Wouldn't have kept looking for ways to get more from me. You'd have accepted responsibility and walked away. Where were we supposed to go? Anywhere but here." I pulled their apartment keys from my pocket, the ones they'd given me years ago for emergencies, the ones I'd kept because I was their father, and fathers keep spare keys. I looked at those keys for a long moment, then I threw them into the gutter, where they landed in 3 inches of rainwater and disappeared into the storm drain. "Goodbye, David. Goodbye, Kelly." I walked past them, back to my truck. Didn't look back, didn't need to. Behind me, I heard Kelly sobbing, heard David shouting something, couldn't make out the words over the rain. Didn't matter. I was done listening. I drove away from that cemetery, from those people, from that part of my life. The rain hammered my windshield. The wipers couldn't keep up. I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see the road. But I made it home, walked inside, changed into dry clothes, made coffee, sat in my kitchen and looked at the empty chair across from me. The chair where Margaret used to sit, the chair where David used to sit when he was young, eating cereal before school, telling me about his day. That chair would stay empty now, forever. I'd won, destroyed them completely, taken everything they had, reduced them to nothing, and all it cost me was my son,